The rain was heavy that night. Water ran down the empty streets of Chicago. Cars moved fast, people hurried home, and the city lights looked blurry through the storm. But one black luxury car stopped slowly near a small corner shop. It was not really a shop. It was just a tiny candy stand with a weak yellow light hanging above it. Behind that stand stood a young woman, around 24 years old. Her name was Madison Clark. Her clothes were simple. Her hands were cold from the weather, but she still smiled at every customer. She sold homemade candy, caramel apples, chocolate bars, sweet peanut treats. It was not a big business, but it was honest work. Inside the black car, a man watched her carefully. His name was Brandon Scott. 35 years old, billionaire, owner of Scott Enterprises. He owned hotels, tech companies, and real estate across America. People called him powerful. Some called him dangerous. Most called him heartless. But tonight, he did not look powerful. He looked tired. Very tired. His driver asked softly, "Sir, should we leave?" Brandon did not answer. His eyes were fixed on Madison. She was laughing with a little boy who had no money. The boy looked sad because he could not buy candy. Madison bent down and gave him a chocolate bar for free. "Next time, you bring me a big smile," she told him. The boy ran away happily. Brandon felt something strange in his chest. Not pain, not sadness, something else. He had watched her for 3 days. Every evening after work, he told his driver to pass by this street. He did not understand. Why? She was not rich. She was not famous. She was just kind. And that was something Brandon had not seen in a long time. "Sir?" the driver asked again. Brandon opened the door. "I'll be back," he said. The rain touched his expensive suit as he walked toward the small candy stand. Madison looked up. She noticed the expensive watch first, then the polished shoes, then the serious face. She gave her usual polite smile. "Would you like something sweet?" she asked. Her voice was soft but confident. Brandon looked at the candies. "I don't eat sugar," he said. Madison laughed lightly. "Then you are standing at the wrong place." For a second, Brandon almost smiled. Almost. "How much do you make in a day?" he suddenly asked. Madison blinked. "That's a strange question." "Answer it." She crossed her arms slightly. "Enough to survive." Brandon looked around. The stand was old. The paint was peeling. The roof leaked water. "This won't last long," he said. "It doesn't have to," she replied calmly. "It just needs to last today." Her answer surprised him. Most people complained. She did not. The rain became heavier. There were no more customers. It was just the two of them. Brandon took a deep breath. "I have a proposal for you," he said. Madison raised an eyebrow. "A business proposal?" "In a way." She studied his face. There was something serious about him, something heavy. "I don't sign contracts in the rain," she joked. "This is not a joke." His tone changed. The air suddenly felt colder. Madison's smile slowly faded. "What kind of proposal?" she asked carefully. Brandon looked directly into her eyes. "I will give you $5 million. Madison froze. She waited for him to laugh. He did not. "In exchange," he continued slowly, "you will have my child." The rain kept falling. Cars passed by. But for Madison, the world went silent. She stared at him, trying to understand what she had just heard. "Excuse me?" she said softly. "I want you to carry my baby." Her heart started beating fast. "You're insane." Brandon did not react. "It will be legal, safe. You will live in my house, all medical care covered. After birth, you will receive the money." Madison stepped back. "I'm not for sale." "You misunderstand," he said calmly. "This is not about you. It's about the child." "Then find someone else," she snapped. I don't want someone else. That made her angry. You don't even know me. I know enough. She shook her head in disbelief. You're one of those rich men who think money can buy anything. Brandon's jaw tightened slightly. I don't think. I know. Madison felt insulted. She began packing her candy jars into boxes. I'm closing. Listen to me, Brandon said. No. Her voice was stronger now. My mother is sick, she said suddenly, surprising even herself. I work here every night to pay for her treatment. But that doesn't mean I will sell myself. Brandon's expression changed for the first time. Sick? He asked quietly. Stage 3 kidney failure, she replied without emotion. Dialysis twice a week. Insurance doesn't cover everything. Brandon looked at her differently now. Not like an object, like a person. I can pay for her full treatment, he said. Madison stopped moving. He continued. Private hospital, best doctors, immediate care. Her hands trembled slightly. This was not a small offer. This was life-changing, but also life-breaking. And what's wrong with you? She suddenly asked. Brandon did not expect that question. What? Men like you don't make offers like this for fun. So what's wrong? He stayed silent for a few seconds. Then he said quietly, I'm dying. The words were simple, but heavy. Madison stared at him. Heart condition, he said. Rare genetic disorder. Doctors say 1 year. Maybe less. The rain softened. Madison felt confused. You want a child because you're dying? She asked. Yes. That's selfish. Maybe. She searched his face for lies. There were none. I have no family, he continued. My parents are dead. No wife, no siblings I trust. When I die, everything goes to distant relatives who hate me. And you think a baby will fix that? No. But it will give me peace. Madison looked away. This was crazy. Completely crazy. But it was also tragic. You don't love me, she said. This is not about love. She felt something sharp in her chest at those words. Exactly, she whispered. Brandon stepped closer. I chose you because I've watched you. That's creepy. I watched how you treat people. You're kind, patient, honest. That still doesn't mean I'll carry your child. He nodded slowly. I understand. He took out a business card and placed it on the counter. My number. Think about it. I won't. You will, he said quietly. She wanted to throw the card away, but she didn't. Brandon turned and walked back toward his car. Before entering, he looked back once. Madison was standing still under the weak yellow light, rain falling around her. For the first time in years, Brandon Scott felt uncertain. That night, Madison could not sleep. Her small apartment felt smaller than ever. Her mother was coughing in the next room. Medical bills were on the kitchen table. $5 million, full treatment, safety. But at what cost? She imagined holding a baby, then giving it away. Her chest hurt. This is wrong, she whispered to herself. But then she heard her mother coughing again, and doubt entered her heart. Meanwhile, in a huge glass mansion across the city, Brandon stood alone by his window. He removed his jacket slowly. His chest hurt slightly. He ignored it. He thought about Madison's eyes. They were not greedy. They were not afraid. They were angry and honest. For years, women had chased him for money. Tonight, for the first time, someone rejected him. Strangely, he respected her more because of it. He touched his chest again. 1 year, maybe less. He did not fear death. He feared emptiness, and somehow he believed Madison Clark could change that, even if she hated him. The next evening, the rain stopped. Madison returned to her candy stand. She told herself she would never call him, but his card was still in her pocket. Around 8 p.m., a black car appeared again. Her heart skipped. The window rolled down. But Brandon did not step out. He simply said, "Have you decided?" Madison looked at him. Her eyes were tired. "No. I'll wait." "For how long?" "As long as I have." His answer made her uneasy, because deep down she knew time was something he did not have much of, and that made everything more complicated. The night grew quiet. Two people from completely different worlds stood only a few feet apart. One had everything except time. One had nothing except heart. And both were about to make a decision that would change their lives forever. Part 1 ends with a question in Madison's heart. Is this a deal with a dying man? Madison did not call Brandon for 3 days, but Brandon still came every evening. He never stepped out of the car again. He just waited, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. Then he would quietly leave. Madison pretended not to notice, but she always noticed. At home, things were getting worse. Her mother collapsed one morning. Madison rushed her to the hospital. The doctor spoke seriously. "She needs a kidney transplant soon. Dialysis is not enough anymore." Madison felt the ground move under her feet. "How much will it cost?" she asked. The number was too big. Too big for a candy seller. That night, she sat alone outside the hospital. She took out Brandon's card. Her hands were shaking. She closed her eyes. Then she called. He answered on the first ring. "I was waiting," he said quietly. Madison swallowed. "Meet me tomorrow," she replied. The next day, she entered Brandon's world for the first time. His mansion was huge, clean cold. Everything looked perfect, but it did not feel warm. Brandon was waiting in the living room. No smile. No pressure, just silence. "I will agree," Madison said directly. Brandon did not look surprised. "But I have conditions," she added. "Tell me." "My mother gets full treatment immediately." "Done." "I will not be treated like an employee." "You won't. And this child will know I am his mother." Brandon paused for a moment. Then he nodded. "Yes." Madison looked into his eyes carefully. "I don't love you," she said honestly. "I know. And you don't love me." He looked away slightly. "No, this is not about love." For some reason, that answer made her chest feel heavy. Lawyers came. Contracts were signed. Everything was official. Medical procedures were planned. Madison moved into a private guest room in the mansion. It felt strange. 1 week ago, she was selling candy in the rain. Now she was living in luxury, but she did not feel happy. She felt trapped inside a decision she could not undo. Days turned into weeks. Brandon kept his distance. He was respectful. He made sure her mother was admitted to the best hospital in the city. Madison visited her mother every day. The treatments started immediately. For the first time in months, her mother looked hopeful. "Who is paying for this?" her mother asked weakly. Madison forced a small smile. "A miracle," she said. One evening, Madison returned to the mansion late. She found Brandon sitting alone in the dark. No lights on, just city lights shining through the glass walls. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" she asked. He did not move. "Sometimes I like to see the world without being seen," he replied. She walked closer. "You could turn on the lights." "It doesn't change anything." Madison studied him carefully. For the first time, he did not look like a billionaire. He looked like a tired man. "You're afraid," she said softly. He looked at her sharply. "I don't get afraid." "Yes, you do." Silence filled the room. After a moment, he spoke quietly. "I'm not afraid of dying." "Then what?" He hesitated. "I'm afraid of leaving nothing behind." Madison felt something soften inside her. "You think a baby will fix that?" "No," he said, "but maybe it will make my life mean something." Madison did not reply, because for the first time, She understood him a little. Weeks later, the doctor confirmed the pregnancy. Madison was going to have Brandon's child. When, she told him, he did not smile. He just closed his eyes for a moment. "Thank you," he said quietly. That surprised her. It sounded real, not like a business deal. As the days passed, something unexpected started happening. They began talking, not about contracts, not about money, but about life. Madison told him about her childhood, how her father left when she was young, how she started selling candy at 16. Brandon listened carefully. One night he shared something too. "I built my company from nothing," he said. "My father died in debt." People laughed at us. Madison looked at him differently. "You worked for everything?" "Yes." "So you weren't always rich?" "No," she smiled slightly. "That explains a lot." "What?" "You understand struggle. You just forgot. Kindness." He looked at her. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not employees, not partners, not women. For the first time in years, he felt human. One afternoon, Madison found him coughing badly in his office. There was blood on his handkerchief. Her heart stopped. "Brandon!" "I'm fine," he said quickly. "You're not fine." She called his doctor immediately. That night, she sat outside his bedroom. Not because of the contract, not because of the baby, but because she was worried. And that worried her. Why did she care? This was supposed to be business, nothing more. Late. At night, Brandon woke up and saw her asleep on the chair near his bed. He watched her quietly. No makeup, no expensive clothes, just a simple girl who had changed his silent house. For the first time in years, the mansion did not feel empty, and something inside him began to change, slowly, dangerously. But not everyone was happy. Across the city, someone else was watching. Brandon's cousin, Victor Scott. He had always believed the company would one day be his. When he heard about the pregnancy, his face turned dark. "If that baby is born," Victor said angrily, "everything goes to him." And Victor was not a man who liked losing. Back at the mansion, Madison stood alone in her room, touching her stomach. Life was growing inside her, a life that connected her to a dying man, a man she was slowly beginning to understand, and maybe something more. But she pushed that thought away. This was not love, it was just a deal, right? The mansion no longer felt empty. Before Madison came, the house was silent, cold, like a hotel where no one truly lived. Now there was soft music in the mornings, the smell of coffee in the kitchen, and sometimes laughter. Brandon noticed the change. He did not say anything, but he noticed. Madison was 3 months pregnant. Her sickness had started. Some mornings she could not even stand properly. One day she fainted in the hallway. When she opened her eyes, she was in Brandon's arms. His face looked scared, not calm, not controlled, scared. "Why didn't you call someone?" he asked angrily. "I'm fine," she whispered. "You're not fine." He carried her carefully to her room. The doctor was called immediately. Brandon did not leave her side, even when the doctor said it was normal, even when Madison said she was okay. He stayed, watching, waiting, protecting. That night, Madison could not sleep. She kept thinking about the way he looked when she fainted. That was not business. That was fear. Real fear. For her or for the baby. She didn't know. And that question made her heart restless. The next morning, Brandon canceled an important meeting. His assistant looked shocked. "Sir, the investors flew from New York. Reschedule." "Sir, this deal is worth—" "I said reschedule." He hung up. Madison watched him from the dining table. "You don't have to cancel work because of me." she said. He poured her a glass of water. I'm not doing it for you. The words sounded cold, but his actions were not. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? It's for the child. She smiled slightly. If that helps you sleep at night? For a second, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Days turned into weeks. Madison started walking in the garden every evening. The mansion had a large backyard with roses and tall trees. One evening, she saw Brandon sitting alone on a bench. He looked pale. She sat beside him quietly. You should be resting, she said. So should you. Silence. The wind moved the trees gently. Brandon, she said softly. Yes? Are you really okay? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, The doctors say my condition is getting worse. Her heart tightened. How much time? He looked at the sky. They stopped giving numbers. Madison felt tears in her eyes, but she quickly turned away. She had no right to cry. This was a deal, not a relationship. Yet. The thought of losing him hurt more than she expected. Meanwhile, across town, Victor Scott was not resting. He sat in his office, angry. He had spent years waiting for Brandon to fail, waiting for him to die, waiting for control. And now, this unexpected. Baby was ruining everything. Find out everything about that girl, Victor ordered his assistant. I want her background, her family, her weaknesses. He smiled darkly. If she leaves, the problem disappears. Back at the mansion, something unexpected happened. Madison found an old piano in one of the rooms. It was covered in dust. You play? Brandon asked from the doorway. A little, she replied. She sat down slowly and pressed a few keys. The soft melody filled the room. It was simple, gentle, but beautiful. Brandon stood still, listening. He had not heard music in this house in years. Who taught you? He asked. My father, she said quietly. You said he left. He did. But before that, he loved music. Brandon watched her carefully. There was pain in her voice. Do you miss him? He asked. Madison paused. I miss who he used to be. Brandon understood that sentence more than she knew. That night, Brandon had a severe chest attack. Madison heard something fall in his room. She ran inside. He was on the floor, struggling to breathe. Brandon! She called the doctor immediately. She held his hand while waiting. His grip was weak. Don't, he whispered. Don't what? She cried. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you care. Her tears fell. Maybe I do. The ambulance arrived. Doctors stabilized him. But the warning was clear. His heart was failing faster. After he returned home, something changed. Brandon was quieter, more thoughtful. One evening, he called his lawyer. I want to update my will, he said. Madison overheard. Her heart dropped. He was preparing for death. That night, she could not control herself anymore. She went to his office. Stop it, she said suddenly. He looked up. Stop what? Stop acting like you're already gone. He stared at her. This is reality. No, she said firmly. Reality is that you're still here. He stood slowly. And for how long? She walked closer. I don't know. But as long as you are live. Her voice broke. He looked at her face, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. Not for money, not for the contract. For him. Madison, he said softly. She realized she was crying. She wiped her tears quickly. I don't want this baby to grow up without knowing you. Silence. Heavy. Silence. Neither do I, he whispered. That was the moment something shifted. This was no longer just about inheritance or a name. It was about family. A few days later, Madison received a strange message. It was from an unknown number. "I know the truth about your deal. Meet me." She felt uneasy. She didn't tell Brandon. She went alone. The meeting was in a quiet cafe. Victor was waiting. He smiled politely. "You must be Madison." She felt cold immediately. "And you are?" "Family." He leaned closer. "Let's not pretend. You're here for money." She stood up. "I don't have time for this." He placed an envelope on the table. Inside were pictures of her mother at the hospital, her home, her old candy stand. "I can make your life very difficult," Victor said calmly. Her heart started racing. "What do you want?" "Leave Brandon." She stared at him. "If there is no baby, there is no problem." Her hands trembled. "You're sick." He smiled. "I'm practical." She walked away without another word. But fear followed her home. That night, she told Brandon everything. His face became dark. "Victor met you?" he asked sharply. "Yes." "And you went alone?" "I didn't want to worry you." He slammed his hand on the table. "This is exactly why I worry." She stepped back, shocked. He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry." Silence. "I won't let him touch you," he said firmly. "Or our child." Our child. The word stayed in the air. Madison felt warmth in her chest. He said our, not mine, not the. Our security around the mansion increased. Victor was warned legally, but Madison knew this was not over. Victor wanted control, and desperate people do dangerous things. That evening, Madison stood in front of the mirror. Her belly was slightly visible. "Now." She touched it gently. "This was supposed to be simple," she whispered, but nothing was simple anymore. Because somewhere between hospital visits, shared dinners, late-night talks, and fear of loss, she had fallen in love, and she was terrified of that truth. Across the hall, Brandon sat alone, looking at an ultrasound picture. His child, his future, and maybe his last chance at happiness. He closed his eyes. He had asked for a baby, but he was getting something much bigger. A family, and the fear of losing it was stronger than the fear of death. Winter arrived early in Chicago. Cold winds touched the glass walls of the mansion. Inside, things were quiet, but not peaceful. Madison was now 7 months pregnant. Her belly was clearly visible. The baby kicked often, sometimes strong, sometimes gentle, and every time, Brandon would pause whatever he was doing just to feel it. One evening, Madison placed his hand on her stomach. "There," she whispered. The baby moved. Brandon froze. His eyes softened in a way Madison had never seen before. "He's strong," Brandon said quietly. "How do you know it's a he?" she teased. He gave a small smile. "I just know." She laughed softly. For a moment. They looked like a normal couple. Not a contract. Not a deal. Just two people waiting for their child. But outside the mansion walls, danger was moving. Victor was losing patience. Legal warnings did not scare him. Security cameras did not stop him. He wanted control, and he wanted it now. "Brandon is getting weaker," Victor told his lawyer. "If something happens before the baby is born, everything comes to me." The lawyer looked nervous. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying accidents happen." Victor's eyes were cold. Very cold. Back at the mansion, Brandon's health had become worse. He tried to hide it, but Madison noticed. He got tired quickly. Sometimes he lost balance. Sometimes he stayed awake all night, unable to breathe properly. One night, Madison found him in his office, holding his chest again. "Brandon," she said softly. He looked pale. "I'm fine." "You always say that." He tried to stand straight, but he almost fell. Madison caught him. Her heart was beating fast. "You don't have to be strong all the time," she whispered. He looked at her. For a second, he looked vulnerable. Not powerful, not rich, Just a man who was afraid. "I don't want you to see me weak," he said. She placed her hand on his face gently. "I already see you." Silence filled the room. Heavy, deep, emotional. Then suddenly, the lights went out. Everything became dark. Madison gasped. What happened? Brandon looked toward the window. The security lights outside were also off. "That's not normal," he said. Before he could move, a loud crash came from downstairs, glass breaking. Madison's heart jumped. "Stay here," Brandon said firmly. "No." "Madison, I'm not leaving you." Another crash. Footsteps. Someone was inside the house. Brandon quickly locked the office door. He grabbed his phone. No signal. The power was cut. This was not an accident. This was planned. Madison felt the baby move strongly inside her. Fear. The baby felt her fear. "Brandon," she whispered. He looked at her. "If anything happens, you run to the panic room. It's behind the bookshelf. I'm not leaving you. You have to protect the baby." Tears filled her eyes. The footsteps were getting closer. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Then, a voice. "Brandon," Victor called calmly from downstairs. "Let's talk like family." Madison felt cold from head to toe. "Victor." Brandon's face turned dark. He walked toward the door slowly. "Stay behind me," he said. The office door suddenly shook. Someone was trying to break it. Madison held her stomach tightly. Her breathing became fast. "Please," she whispered. The door broke open. Victor stood there with two men behind him. He looked relaxed, almost amused. "Good evening," Victor said. Brandon stepped forward. "What do you want?" Victor looked at Madison's belly. "That?" Madison stepped back. "You're insane," Brandon said. Victor smiled. "No, I'm realistic." One of the men grabbed Brandon suddenly. Madison screamed, "Stop!" Brandon struggled, but he was weak. Very weak. Victor walked closer to Madison. "You should have taken the money and left quietly," he said. "I would have given you more." She backed away until she hit the wall. "Don't come near me!" Victor's eyes were dark. "If that baby is never born, everything returns to normal." Madison felt dizzy. The stress, the fear, the pressure. Her stomach tightened suddenly, a sharp pain. She gasped. Brandon saw her face change. "Madison!" Another pain, stronger. She held her stomach and fell to her knees. Victor looked confused. "What's happening?" Brandon shouted. "She's going into labor!" Victor froze for a second. This was not part of the plan. Madison cried out in pain. The baby was coming early. 7 months. Too early. Brandon pushed one of the men away with sudden strength. "Call an ambulance!" he yelled. Victor stepped back. He did not want murder. He wanted control. But this was turning into something worse. Madison screamed again. There was blood. Brandon felt his heart pounding painfully. He dropped to his knees beside her. "Stay with me," he whispered desperately. She grabbed his shirt tightly. "Don't leave me," she cried. Her words broke something inside him. The ambulance sirens were finally heard in the distance. Victor stepped back completely. "This isn't over," he said quietly before leaving. Brandon did not care. All he saw was Madison. All he heard was her pain. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Doctors rushed her into the emergency room. Brandon was forced to wait outside. His chest hurt badly, but he ignored it. Minutes felt like hours. He felt helpless, powerless. For the first time in his life, money could do nothing. Doctor finally came out. "She is in critical condition," the doctor said. "And the baby?" "The baby is very small. We are trying to save both." Brandon felt his legs shake. He sat down slowly. He whispered to himself, "This is my fault. If he had never made that offer, if he had never brought her into his world, she would be safe." The guilt crushed him. After what felt like forever, a nurse came out. The baby is alive. Brandon looked up instantly. A boy, she said. He's in the NICU. Very weak, but fighting. Brandon's eyes filled with tears. And Madison? She lost a lot of blood. She's unconscious. Brandon felt his heart crack. He walked slowly to the glass window of the newborn unit. He saw his son for the first time. So small, so fragile, connected to machines, fighting for life. And suddenly, Brandon felt something stronger than fear. Love, deep, pure, unbreakable. Love. I asked for a child, he whispered, but I never knew it would feel like this. Hours later, Madison was still unconscious. Brandon sat beside her bed. He held her hand gently. You're not allowed to leave, he said softly. I still need you. His voice broke. I don't care about contracts. I don't care about money. He leaned closer. I love you. The words finally came out. Honest, raw, real. I love you, Madison. A tear rolled down his cheek, and for the first time in his life, Brandon Scott was not afraid of death. He was afraid of losing love. The hospital hallway felt endless. White walls, cold air, the sound of machines beeping. Brandon had not slept for 2 days. He moved between 2 rooms. One held Madison, the other held his newborn son. Both were fighting for life, and he could do nothing but wait. Madison was still unconscious. Her face looked pale against the white pillow. Brandon sat beside her, holding her hand. Please wake up, he whispered. You're stronger than this. He remembered the rainy night at the candy stand, her small smile, her brave eyes. He had offered her money, but she had given him something much greater. She had given him love, and now he was terrified of losing it. In the NICU, their baby boy lay, inside a small glass box. Tiny fingers, tiny chest moving slowly, machines helping him breathe. Brandon stood there quietly. He placed his hand gently on the glass. I'm here, he whispered. You don't know me yet, but I'm your father. His voice broke. I promise, I will fix everything. Later that day, the head doctor asked to speak with him privately. Brandon followed him into the office. The doctor looked serious. We ran some emergency tests, the doctor said. Brandon's heart tightened. Is it about Madison? No, it's about you. Brandon frowned. What do you mean? When your son was born, we tested his blood. Brandon stayed silent. The doctor continued. Your son's blood type and tissue match are extremely rare. Brandon didn't understand. Speak. Clearly, the doctor leaned forward. Your son is a perfect bone marrow match for you. The room went silent. Brandon blinked. What? The doctor nodded slowly. Your heart condition is caused by a genetic disorder affecting your blood and bone marrow. A transplant was always the only long-term solution. Brandon stared at him. But none of my relatives matched. Yes, the doctor said, but your son does. Brandon felt dizzy. You're saying, if the baby grows stronger and is stable enough in the future, he could donate bone marrow and save your life. The words felt unreal, impossible. Brandon leaned back in his chair, his son. The child he wanted so he wouldn't die alone was the one who could actually stop him from dying. Tears filled his eyes, for the first time in months. There was hope, but the doctor's face remained serious. There is a problem. Brandon's heart dropped again. What now? The baby is too weak right now. He was born premature. His lungs are not fully developed. Brandon swallowed. So we wait? Yes. He must survive first. That night, Brandon walked back to Madison's room. He sat beside her again. You won't believe this, he whispered softly. Our son. He might save me. He let out a small, broken laugh. I thought I was giving him life. But maybe he's giving me mine. A small tear fell onto Madison's hand. And then her fingers moved. Brandon froze. Madison? Her eyelids slowly opened. The light bothered her at first. Then she saw him, his tired eyes, his messy hair, his fear. Brandon, she whispered weakly. He almost collapsed in relief. You're awake. She tried to move. Where is... The baby? He's alive, Brandon said quickly. A boy. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Is he okay? He's fighting. She closed her eyes in relief. Then she looked at him carefully. You look terrible, she whispered softly. He gave a weak smile. I've had better days. There was silence. Soft, emotional. Then she asked quietly, Did you stay? He squeezed her hand. Always. Her eyes filled with tears. You didn't have to. Yes, he said. I did. She looked at him for a long moment, and then she saw something different. Not a businessman, not a dying man, a man who loved her. You said something, she whispered. When I was unconscious, Brandon's heart stopped. You heard? She nodded slightly. You said you loved me. Silence filled the room. He could lie. He could say she imagined it. But he was tired of hiding. Yes, he said quietly. I love you. No contracts, no conditions, just truth. Madison's lips trembled. This wasn't supposed to happen. I know. This started as a deal. I know. She held his hand tightly. But somewhere, I stopped seeing it as a deal. He leaned closer. So did I. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I was so scared of losing you, she whispered. Brandon pressed his forehead gently against hers. I was more scared of losing you. And in that hospital room, without witnesses, without contracts, without money, their love became real. But peace never lasts too long. The next morning, the police arrived. Victor had been arrested. One of the men he hired confessed everything. Breaking into the mansion, cutting the power, trying to force Madison to leave, attempted harm. Victor's plan had failed, and now he was facing prison. When Brandon heard the news, he felt no anger, only clarity. Some people choose greed, others choose love, and now he knew which side he wanted to live on. Days passed. The baby slowly became stronger. Madison was allowed to see him for the first time. Brandon helped her walk carefully to the NICU. When she saw her son, she started crying immediately. He's so small, she whispered. But he's strong, Brandon said. The nurse gently placed the tiny baby in Madison's arms. For the first time, mother and son touched. The baby's small fingers wrapped around Madison's finger, and she felt something powerful. This is not a contract, she whispered. This is our family. Brandon stood beside her. He looked at his son, then at Madison, and he realized something important. He no longer wanted to survive just to leave a name behind. He wanted to live with them. Before leaving the hospital that night, Brandon called his lawyer. I want to change everything, he said. The contract. With Madison. Sir, cancel it. And the payment agreement? Transfer everything to a family trust. For the child? For my wife. The lawyer paused. Wife? Brandon smiled slightly. Yes. He was done making deals. Now he was choosing love. Spring arrived slowly in Chicago. The cold winter was gone. The hospital room no longer felt like a place of fear. It felt like a place of second chances. Madison was strong again. The baby had gained weight. His breathing was normal. His tiny hands were stronger. And Brandon was still alive. Not just alive, hopeful. 3 months later, the doctors confirmed it. The baby was healthy enough. The bone marrow transplant could be done in the future. Not now, but soon. There was real hope. For the first time since his diagnosis, Brandon felt something new. He was planning a future, not preparing for death. One evening, Brandon stood in the nursery inside the mansion. The room had changed. Soft blue walls, a wooden crib, small toys, warm light. It no longer felt like a cold house. It felt like a home. Madison entered quietly, holding their son. Brandon turned and smiled. That smile was different now. Warmer. Real. Someone looks sleepy, he said softly. He refuses to sleep, Madison laughed gently. Brandon walked closer and touched his son's tiny hand. He's stubborn, Brandon said. He gets that from you, Madison teased. They both laughed. Simple, natural, like a real couple. Later that night, after the baby finally slept, Brandon asked Madison to walk with him in the garden. The air was soft. The sky was clear. Madison felt peaceful, something she had not felt in months. They stopped near the bench where they once talked about fear. Brandon looked at her seriously. There's something I need to say. Madison's heart beat faster. He took a deep breath. When I met you, I was selfish. She shook her head. You were scared. Yes, he admitted. I thought money could solve loneliness. He looked at her gently. But you taught me something. She waited. Love cannot be bought. Her eyes filled slightly. He continued. I tore up the contract. She looked surprised. What? It's gone. No payment. No agreement. She stared at him. Why? Because you're not here because of money anymore. He stepped closer. You stayed when things became dangerous. You stayed when I was weak. You stayed when you could have left. His voice softened. I don't want you here. Because of a deal. I want you here because you choose me. Silence filled the garden. Madison felt tears in her eyes. You're asking me to stay? No. He slowly got down on one knee. I'm asking you to marry me. Madison gasped. Softly. This is not because of the baby, he said clearly. This is not because I almost died. This is because I love you. He took out a simple ring. Not too big, not too flashy, just beautiful. You gave me more than a child, Brandon whispered. You gave me life. Her tears fell freely now. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said softly. I know. It started as a business deal. I know, she smiled through her tears. But somewhere between hospital nights and garden talks, I fell in love with you. Brandon's eyes shined. So, is that a yes? Madison laughed softly. Yes. He stood and placed the ring on her finger. Then he kissed her gently, not rushed, not desperate, but full of promise. Months later, the wedding was small, private, simple, no big media, no business partners, only close friends and Madison's mother, who was now recovering well. Madison walked down the aisle in a simple white dress. Brandon looked at her like she was the only person in the world, because to him, she was. When they said their vows, Brandon's voice shook. I once thought I needed a child to carry my name, he said, but now I know. Love is what carries a life. Madison smiled. And I once thought you were just a rich man trying to buy happiness, she said softly. But you became the man who gave me a family. They kissed. And this time, it wasn't part of a contract. 1 year later, the transplant was successful. Brandon's body accepted the bone marrow. His health slowly improved. Doctors called it rare. Some called it lucky. But Brandon knew the truth. Wasn't luck, it was love. Madison reopened her small candy stand. One weekend, but not because she needed money. She did it because she loved it. Brandon stood beside her in simple clothes. Their little boy sat in a stroller nearby. A small child came to buy candy but had no money. Madison smiled and gave it for free. Brandon looked at her and smiled. "You never changed," he said. She looked at him warmly. "No," she replied. "But you did." He nodded. Yes, he did. He was no longer a man afraid of dying alone. He was a husband, a father, a man loved deeply. That evening, as the sun set, Brandon held his son in his arms. Madison stood beside him. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. Regret. What? That rainy night. He looked at her carefully. "If I could go back." He paused. "I wouldn't change a single thing, because what started as a cold agreement became a warm forever. And what began as a deal for a child became a story of love, forgiveness, and second chances."